For my video, I'm going to be showing you different ways to do shuffles with your decks using the Voyager Tarot by James Wanless, and then Daughters of the Moon, and then the Manga Tarot, the Sherlock Holmes Tarot, and then the Tarot of the Orishas. My first shuffle that I really like is called One and Done. The One and Done is pretty simple. You take your deck, you don't shuffle at all, you flip over, that's your card. Very easy, easy to follow. One and done. It seems that this one's the hardest for people to understand because they go, is that it? And I go, yep, that's exactly it. The next one that I'm going to be doing is one that's pretty simple for most people. That's just the drop method. So using my Sherlock Holmes deck, I'm just going to drop half the cards into the rest of the deck. Just slowly letting them fall through. And that way I'm not bothering the laminate of the deck, and it's not interfering and getting those weird corners that you might get in a deck. So I find this one to work with all sizes and shapes of decks. Keeps everything pretty consistent. You get the randomization, which is always just perfect. I just love it. What if your card deck is a little smaller? This deck is uneven a little bit, so it's a rectangle shape. I can use this deck, and it has a smooth surface, to be able to make cool little snaky or alphabet shapes out of it. And then I randomly put the cards back together into one solid deck. Very easy to do. Some people might get hung up on, well, wait, what are you doing? It's the same way that you would do in a rainbow method, except you're just motioning the cards back and forth along your cloth that you use. It works really well on a table as well. I'm showing you here where I can even make this into a circle, which is perfect. And then I just, again, pick up the cards where I want and put them back into a deck. Now that I'm finished with that one, I want to show you another one, which is pretty cool. This one is just separating the decks into threes, picking up the next, and finishing. Really easy peasy. The next time I want reversals, I'm going to put them into separate. And once I separate them into threes, I'm going to take the middle deck, the middle column, and reverse it. That way I have reversals. Using my Tarot of the Orishas deck, I'm going to show you how to do just a regular old casino style shuffle. You take all the cards, you divide them in half, and then you flip them over one on top of each other. This way is pretty easy because you want to make sure that when you're dividing the decks, you just let them drop, as opposed to making them like that where you're making them evenly distributed, but some of the time that might ruin your deck because it makes it bent. So what I do is I just divide them in half, and here's another one called more of a player style, where you keep your arms at a point or an angle, and then you use the corners to shuffle. You still get that even distribution, which is perfect, but you're not destroying the middle part of your deck so that they don't become all flimsy. Who likes flimsy cards, right? None of us like that. So watch again as I move my elbows out to make that nice point and make sure that my cards are touching at the point. This shuffle is the same as the previous drop shuffle, where I'm now using the short side of the deck to shuffle, dropping one bunch of cards on top of another. Some people are really fast at that. I am not. Let's say you have those nice shiny cards and you want to keep them that way. This way, you just drop the cards one on top of each other, where you can still get that even distribution, as you see here, without destroying the laminate on your deck because you're not bending and bending and bending those cards. At this point, I almost feel like a magician, so why don't we do some other work, which is just combinations. Combinations are simple. You just pick the kind of spread that I've shown you, the kind of shuffle that I've shown you, and you mix it in with other shuffles that I showed you. So this one's mixing in that alphabet shuffle where you made it into the S shape. From here, I'm going to then do the corner shuffle, where I'm still getting that distribution, trying to not really hard not to mess up the corners or bend them or stretch them too much. And you can also do a rainbow. A rainbow spread is always cool because you can pick out cards or have the querent pick cards. Another thing that I do is, let's say that you're in the middle of putting the cards back together and cards fall out. Those cards I do not discard. I put them to the side, bring all of my cards back together and gather them. Doesn't matter how I gather those. And then this now becomes my spread, which is very cool. It's almost like jumpers on steroids, if you've ever heard of the jumper cards, right? This now becomes my spread that I'm going to use with my client no matter what my shuffle was. So I'm going to try a different way. I'm going to do the rainbow again. This time I'm going to pick out what cards I want, or have the querent pick out those cards. And then again, those now are going to become my spread or my reading for the querent, which is very nice. Another nice way to shuffle cards. I have to be honest when I say that when I first got the Daughters of the Moon deck, I didn't know how to shuffle them. They're pretty big and cumbersome. So what I do is I spread them around the table, dropping them from the bottom to the top. This seems to be the best way and the least labor intensive. But let's say that you don't like that method. You can easily just do a straight shuffle around the table. It does take a lot of space on the table, which some people don't have, but I found that this works really well. It's also a good shuffle that you can use with couples, where you can let one person shuffle some of the cards while the other person is shuffling all at the same time. Now the Daughters of the Moon deck also likes to be dropped. So I drop the cards and then turn the piles of cards one on top of each other. And it seems to really like that type of shuffle whenever I'm using those cards, which I appreciate. I appreciate when my deck kind of talks to me. And as you can see with this Daughters of the Moon deck, it really enjoys just the drop method for when I'm shuffling it, as opposed to when I was trying to just move it around the table. You could almost see where it didn't like that. You can also do a combo with this deck where you can do the corner shuffle and get that even distribution that I'm showing you here. That works out really well too with this deck. Crazy enough, oddly enough, it really does like it. Now I'm going to go back to the Voyager deck. Now the Voyager deck is also a very large deck. For some reason, I think it's almost 2 inches. To do this one, I go back and forth, picking cards from the bottom, picking cards from the top, picking cards from the bottom, picking cards from the top. And that's a good way for me to get an even distribution on this deck without killing my hands. I have to admit that once I start using this deck and playing with it, by the end of the time, my hands would be sore, so I wouldn't take this to a fair or anything. It also likes the drop method. So you can go in, drop a few cards at a time, gather them back up, make them into a nice neat deck, and do it the same way. Now I tend to like to use my left hand to be able to shuffle. And this reason is pretty simple, because I want to connect with my subconscious mind. And the way to do that is to work with the left side of your brain. Some people don't prefer that. I do. Also, many people feel that the left side of your or your left hand is the most giving or the most intuitive. I think that's also because of that connection. Using the Voyager deck, I also use the drop method of just shuffling back and forth, and it really appreciates that as well. And then I get it into a nice pile. So as you can see, there's tons of different ways. The other way that I like to shuffle my cards is to do the rainbow spread and then make sure that I try to have that spread fall on top of each other, and then I separate, and those are my 2 cards for the answer. I use the drop method again here, and I'm going to separate into 3, and then those will be my reading for the client. Some people like this, don't like this. I don't know. I find it an easier way to do a past, present, or a 3-card reading. I don't know about you, but after working with so many different ways to shuffle and learning so much from my Denver Tarot Meetup friends as well as others on the internet, I started to find other cool ways. This way I use to get the maximum number of reversals possible. To do this, you just use your hand and mush down on the cards and fan them like cocktail napkins. It's very easy. I also combo this usually with a straight casino shuffle. So I just make cocktail napkins out of my cards, fan them back into place. Pretty simple. And then I do a casino shuffle right after that as well. Some of the time I'll mix that up and not just do a casino shuffle, but do a separation of 3 different columns. It just kind of depends on how I feel that day and also the deck. From there, I am showing you how many reversals you can get with that type of spread, which I find pretty satisfying. If you don't read reversals, then don't worry about doing this at all. But I find that this is the best way for me to get maximum reversals. Shiny thoughts, everyone. Thanks for watching.